in Swanson.
I don't see a little.
About run Adams in Swanson. That's a good thing, I think. Mike doesn't think so.
For a long sleeve shirt today. Too bad.
Could be. It could be.
You've done the right
How's
thing.
Brad? Good. Oh, it's crazy busy.
What if we have one of those?
I'm gonna have to buy new tires. I'm spinning the tread off of mine. I can't get anything done. And you?
I feel like a couple projects are about to come off my list, so.
Good deal. Oops. Well, I hope you do. We finally got our video.
Really? I swear.
I just didn't know we had to be careful when you go home.
About 1 minute. Keep talking, we have about 1 minute.
So is this part of our retirement?
Yeah, that's what, that's the research. They do is they rank the pays. So this is just a ranking of vendors. And they're asking for the approval. We can keep that split. Right here, professional financial advisor.
I think I put it's the same as the two. Who's the one? Oh, it's good. I've never heard of these people.
We'll wait to hear on that, see what they say.
That's,
I don't think so.
Here we go. All right, everyone, let's call the meeting to order tonight. Welcome to North Platte City Council meeting, August 17th, 2021 at 5:30 PM. We're calling the meeting to order. We have an invocation by Jeremy Rinke. Did I get that right? Okay, Harvest Christian Fellowship.
Thank you guys for letting me pray, come and pray.
Thanks for being here.
All right, let's pray. God, I just thank you for the opportunity to just come tonight and pray for our city and for our leaders. God, I know that these leaders up here, Lord, they have to make a lot of important and hard decisions, even tonight and every week. And God, I just pray that you would just continue to give them just supernatural wisdom to know what the right things to do as they lead this city. God, I pray that you would help them to make the right decisions, God, even when it's hard, even when it's not popular. And God, I just pray that you would continue just to protect them, and I pray your blessings over them and their families. God, I thank you for this great city of ours. God, I know that you love North Platte and you have such great plans for this city. And so, God, I just pray for your blessings and your favor to be upon our city. God, I pray that North Platte would even be a bright light in the rest of the state and even our country. And so, God, I just pray for your presence to be here tonight. God, I pray for just peace and wisdom as they discuss all the different things that need to be discussed tonight. And I ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Roll call, please.
Disley,
Here.
Tryon,
Here.
Bulls,
Here.
Lucas,
Here.
Garrett,
Here.
Harmon,
Here.
Baker,
Here.
Woods.
Here.
Thank you. Open Meetings Act. A current copy of the Open Meetings Act of the State of Nebraska is posted on the wall at the back of the council chambers. Meeting procedure. The public may address specific agenda items at the pleasure of the mayor. If recognized by the mayor, please identify yourself by stating your name and address. Please address the council through the mayor and limit remarks to 3 minutes or less. We respect our city employees and request that any complaints or criticisms of employees not be aired in a public meeting. Concerns about employees should be brought to the attention of the city administrator or the mayor. Individuals in violation will be declared out of order. Awards and accolades. We have an award and sort of an accolade tonight. It is my pleasure to present it to Chief Hudson. Front and center, please, Chief. I'll buy the microphone, I have to read this. Important stuff. Admiral of the Great Navy of the State of Nebraska. To all who shall see these presents greetings. Know ye that reposing special trust and confidence in the patriotism, valor, fidelity, and abilities of Chief Dan Hudson, and knowing you to be a good person and loyal friend and counselor, I have nominated and do appoint you an admiral in the Great Navy of the State of Nebraska. You are therefore called to diligently discharge the duties of admiral by doing and performing all manner of things thereto belonging. And I do strictly charge and require all officers, seamen, tadpoles, and goldfish under your command to be obedient to your orders as admiral. And you are to observe and follow from time to time such directions as you shall receive according to the rules and discipline of the Great Navy of the State of Nebraska. This commission to continue in force during a period of your good behavior and the pleasure of the Chief Admiral of the Great Navy of the State of Nebraska. Given under my hand in the city of Lincoln, State of Nebraska, this first day of August 2021, in the year of our Lord, signed by Governor Pete Ricketts. Congratulations. Who says we don't have fun at city council meetings? Okay. Consent agenda. All matters under consent agenda are considered by the city council to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. Any city council member may, however, remove an item from consent by request. Item number 1, approve minutes of August 3 and 10, 2021. Number 2, send the application of Jennifer Lockhart-Lusk as liquor license manager at Ruby Tuesday, located at 2320 South Jeffers Street, to the Liquor Control Commission with no recommendation. Item number 3, approve the appointment of Jim Backenstoes to the Board of Adjustment.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion Reeker, second Carmen. Calling the question, please vote on the consent agenda. Consent agenda, the consent agenda has passed. Moving on to the regular agenda, but pausing briefly. Boy Scouts, we have some chairs over here if you'd like to run over there and sit down. You're welcome to. Okay, we're starting tonight's session with a public hearing on item number 4. Item number 4, consider action on a recommendation by the North Platte Planning Commission on an application by Prospect Enterprises LLC for a conditional use permit to allow a horse race track and associated improvements located, located in an I-1 light industrial district in the northeast corner of the intersection of Victoria Lane and East Walker Road. Just a second, please. Let me explain the rules here. So, as you can see, I have a conveniently placed timer, which hopefully will work better than my timer 2 weeks ago. That didn't work very well, so I've downloaded a new one. We're going to try something different. Typically, we're going to ask people to keep their comments to 3 minutes or less. However, following the slight change that I announced in the last council meeting, we will give those who are presenting the facts of a situation, in this case, 15 minutes to present the facts and the situation, and then we'll proceed with the 3-minute time. Okay? Everybody on board? Okay, so that being said, you, sir, please approach, tell us who you are, where you're from, and I will start the timer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Brian Jordy, Omaha, Nebraska, here on behalf of North Platte Exposition and Racing, along with Prospect Enterprises LLC, and we're respectfully requesting that this body approve a conditional use permit for a horse racing track here in North Platte. And before I get started,
Mr. Jordy, sorry, I apologize. I failed to say the public hearing is now open, so, okay, please continue. Thank you.
Thank you. And before we get started in earnest, may I have permission to pass out to the council members some additional information? Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you.
So as I said, I'm here on behalf of North Platte Exposition and Racing, and we're very excited to be here following a 6-0 approval by the Planning Commission on this very application. And we're very much looking forward to answering any and all questions you may have about this exciting project. So what we're looking to do is on a parcel of ground depicted there on the site plan to my left of 77 acres is to construct a 5/8 mile horse racing track, and then the auxiliary facilities such as the stables, the barns, and other things necessary for the horse racing. And the piece of ground we're very excited about given the location on I-80 and then just to the east of Highway 83. We're excited about that not only because it's such a prominent location, a great location, but also because of the existing infrastructure such as many lodging options right around the area, the food, and other type of options that we believe we will be a partner with this community in bringing, to our estimates, 1.7 million people to North Platte once the entire facility is up and running. 33% of those are projected to be from out of state. So the prospect before you is an exciting economic development opportunity, something that does not exist in the surrounding area for hundreds of miles at this time. And we're projecting that once we're fully up and running, to employ in excess of 200 up to 275 or more persons with an annual payroll of over $5 million a year. This service area that we're also excited about is roughly 37,000 persons in the greater service area here outside of North Platte. And then we also, based on our projections, show us that we will, as I said, be pulling new people out of state to be spending their entertainment dollars, their revenues here in North Platte. Another part of what we're excited about is once we get this up and running races, as we were completely transparent with planning and as we have been throughout this process, the plan is to then apply for a gaming operator license through the Nebraska Racing and Gaming Association. And so we will go to that commission after this is approved, if we're fortunate enough to do so, apply for a gaming license. And once we have the synergies of the racetrack and those operations going, and then if we're so fortunate, the gaming facility, we project that the new taxes directly to the city itself per year will be in excess of $1.4 million with an identical amount going to the county. So $2.8 million in total of new tax dollars generated by all of the activities. On top of that, a portion of that would be $8 million annually that will go to Property Tax Relief Fund. And we all know the headache that property taxes are in this state, and it's been for decades trying to solve that problem. So we're excited to be your partners in this great community and help generate revenue from this opportunity to help benefit everyone, regardless if they're interested in horse racing or not. Our team, on the racing side, we detailed there the short biography on the key players, so I'm not going to go into detail so we have enough time for questions, but it's going to be Brian Becker and his daughter Brianne Becker. Brian has been involved in horse racing and horse raising and breeding for well over 2 decades. He's been operating the racetrack in Hastings out of his own pocket, been committed to this for over 2 decades. After November 3rd, when the voters of this state overwhelmingly passed in greater than 65% the concept of marrying up gaming facilities with racetracks, a lot of people came out of the woodwork, and that's fine. They're free to do that. I just want to make it very clear that the team behind this project isn't a Johnny-come-lately or that just hatched this idea overnight. They've actually been running races, putting them on for over 20 years, committed to this process. So it's not just a get-rich-quick scheme or some investment idea that you may be hearing of some other applicants across the state potentially. So they are horsemen, horsewomen first and foremost, and committed to making the racetrack a success, regardless of whether or not what steps come after that. So there's been a lot of newspaper articles and pros and cons, and I just want to make sure we get out any type of information you want here tonight. We're not going to duck any questions about anything that goes along with horse racing, and even though that is the narrow issue before this council, we respect your curiosity of the future plans, and so fair game to any questions you have to ask, because we want you all to leave here. Well, we want you to hopefully vote tonight for us, and we want you to do that with all the information that you possibly could have answered. The race plan. So it's interesting, in the state of Nebraska, there's laws that require for any day that you're going to have horse racing, you have to run at least one Nebraska-bred race, a race for horses that are exclusively raised here in Nebraska. And that's, again, to keep it consistent with the mission of growing that industry, Nebraska's industry. And so why we have a 4-year plan to run 30 race days at this facility, to get to that plan is going to take 4 years, as I said. And in the first year, we plan to run the legal minimum, which is 1. And to run that race, we have to get permission from the Racing Commission to select the day and then run one Nebraska race. We plan to run quarter horses. The 5/8 mile does accommodate thoroughbreds, however. So just to be clear on that, it's not any exclusive just to quarter horses. And one of the great things about your applicants here is that Brian Becker himself has quarter horses that he owns that, again, he's been investing in for years for this great opportunity. So we can hit the ground literally running, so to speak, faster than anybody else if we can get this done this evening. And because you have to have, again, the registered quarter horses in the state, and he does, and no one else does. So we believe that the horse racing team offers a lot of synergies and really has been planning this for, frankly, years, not just months. And then on top of that, when we get to the next phase, if we're so fortunate, we've partnered with what we believe is the premier gaming solutions, hence their name, Global Gaming Solutions entity in the country, operating over 24 facilities, Remington Park, Lone Star, and who knows how to assist us with the racing from a consultant standpoint, and then, of course, the gaming facility as that moves forward. I anticipate some questions. Again, I know we're narrowly focused on one piece of this, but towards the future. And I want to be very clear that this industry will be one of the most, if not the most, heavily regulated industries in Nebraska. Right now, the commission, Gaming and Racing, Racing and Gaming, pardon me, commission has a draft of 250 pages of rules and regulations of how all this is going to work. So this isn't some Wild West thing with no oversight. It's going to be heavily regulated and watched, from the amount of security to how we self-police, to interaction with the local police, to making sure everything is secure and our guests feel very comfortable on the premises, to all of the ins and outs of the operations. A lot of times people are against regulations. We frankly welcome them because we're confident we can meet and exceed all of the criteria. And along those same lines, the Planning Commission, as I think you're aware, added certain criteria that it wanted to make sure we complied with, and we agreed 100% to every one of those. No problem whatsoever. We're not looking to take any shortcuts, getting any sweet deals or side deals. Everything's going to be above board, and what you determine to be reasonable, we are ready, willing, and able, with the help of our partners, Global Gaming Solutions, to meet those criteria. I have a lot more that I could say, but I'd rather than anticipate every question, maybe just allow you folks to ask questions so we can get to the heart of what might be on each of your minds. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'd open up for questions.
We can call you back up for questions later. Right?
Okay.
Okay. Does anyone have anything you'd like to ask this gentleman right now?
Mr. Jordy?
Yes, sir.
I know that gaming has different taxation that you mentioned earlier, but do you guys still pay normal real estate property tax, normal payroll taxes, those types of things, as any business operation would?
Yes, 100%. So all those taxes would be paid and collected. The only tax that isn't would be sales tax on the act of gaming itself. But in terms of any restaurant or any other facilities, all the taxes would be paid, and then we pay an additional 20% of the gross gaming revenues, which leads to the $8 million a year in property tax relief, the $2.8 million collectively to the county and the city. And then, interestingly enough, this facility itself alone is projected to contribute over $285,000 every year to the Compulsive Gamblers Fund, to make sure that for that unfortunate small part of our population that cannot handle the freedoms associated with this project, that they will be taken care of to some degree with money that we're contributing to that.
Okay. But in normal county real estate tax is paid on the facility, and personal property tax just as any normal business operation?
Exactly.
Okay.
Real property taxes, and then on any buildings, equipment, the personal property, absolutely tax. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question along those lines, Ty. Excuse me. Am I correct in my understanding that you're going to be registered as a nonprofit?
Yes, so the North Platte Exposition and Racing is a nonprofit, and that's what's required to apply for the racing license and run the races. So those are nonprofits by state statute throughout the state. So that part of it is nonprofit. When we get to phase 2 on the gaming side, that would be a regular corp or LLC that's not nonprofit.
So on the horse track portion of this, you would qualify to go to the county for a tax exemption. Is that correct?
I can tell you that that's not something that's even on our radar, so I can't even tell you, because it's not something that, frankly, to be honest, we're concerned with or need to do, frankly.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And Mr. Jordy, just to piggyback a little bit off the taxes, so that $8 million, $80 million, I think it was $80 million.
$8 million a year that goes to the
Property tax credit cash fund, that's the 70%. 25% goes to counties where gambling is authorized, and then the city splits that 25%
That's
with
exactly
the county.
right.
Okay, so that's split down the middle. The property tax credit, that just goes to the state, right? And they'll divvy that up along the entire state of Nebraska?
That's right. Now, we'd
Okay.
prefer, frankly, if it could stay right here, but the state will do that,
Sure.
and then it'll be divvied up where they see fit.
They've dictated. Okay, thanks for that clarity on that.
Yes, sir.
One question I had, not about taxes, but I do notice in the proposed motion, item number 2 of the conditional use, construction of the track and infrastructures, including utilities, drainage, and street paving, must be completed within 2 years of the date of issuance of the conditional use, for the conditional use approval. And just trying to gauge, and I believe I heard you guys correctly when you stated this at the planning commission hearing, that includes the street out front. What street is that?
East Walker.
East Walker Road. So you're prepared to make East Walker Road a serviceable road for your facility? Is that, am I right in that statement?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, obviously, that benefits us. This needs to be a first-class operation, and you know, if that makes sense and is what's needed, we'll obviously do that.
Okay, and that goes along with the utilities, the sewage, everything? Your
Yes, sir. That's
guys are
100
fully prepared there?
Yes, that's 100% our responsibility to pull in on premises all utilities needed, whatever it takes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Jordy, how much of Walker do you anticipating constructing to meet the city standards?
Well, if it's really up to the city. What I'm expecting is, I think at minimally a turn lane is gonna be requested. So for traffic exiting to the north towards the facility, we still want the flow through, so you're not waiting for someone blinking. So minimally, it would be expanding it so that we can have that ingress and egress that allows turning in and out of the property without clogging the flow through. But we're prepared to work with the city engineer and really look at whatever makes the most sense.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jordy. We're going to continue the public hearing, but we reserve the right to ask you a lot more questions.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. This is a public hearing. Anyone who would like to is welcome to come up, tell us your name, and make your statement, please.
Excuse me. My name is George Hawes. I live at 721 West 9th Street. You may be looking at a Trojan horse, and I'll give you some concerns that I have. One is we have not addressed at all the social ills that come with gambling, with making gambling extremely accessible to people, very easy in their backyard. Do we want to look at our children and say, this is great. This is an improvement to the city of North Platte. Isn't it wonderful? Is that the message we want to send our children? We also have a North Platte Community College right here with a lot of young people, and I submit to you that that is not a good environment for them. There is a study conducted, or been numerous studies conducted, and they were all brought together in a publication by a professor at University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. I'd be glad to share that with any of you who would like to see that later. But pointing out when it comes to the economic benefits, I submit to you that those are very likely very much inflated when it comes to the net benefit or net drain on our economy. We've got to think about dealing with all those, as he referred to, unfortunate small group of people who can't deal with the freedom. Well, you know, that's going to be a growing group, and you know that as well as I do. We've got problems associated with rehabilitation, poverty, the drain from small businesses right here in North Platte, who will see some of those dollars go to gambling instead, gambling which offers no usable service to the people of this part of the state. We talk about all these people coming from outside of the state, 1 million people, whatever it is, from other states as well as other parts of Nebraska. How much of that money will actually go to the retail stores, and how much of it will go instead to the gambling institution and be lost there by people who hope to be big winners, even though they know in their minds that it doesn't work that way. I think it's something we need to be very, very hesitant to approve for our fine community? Is it something that will benefit North Platte? And I submit to you that no, it will not. Thank you.
Thank you. Still a public hearing. Anyone would like to speak, please approach, tell us who you are and where you live, and offer your thoughts. Come on up, sir.
Ed Mueller, North Platte, Nebraska, 602 South York Avenue. I'd like to hand out some illustrations real quick if I could.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Now, at the Planning Commission meeting, I mentioned the proximity of the backstretch of the racetrack to the interstate. And it was brought up as to refer it to Remington Park. It was mentioned to have an interstate right by it. And I've been to Remington Park a few times myself. So I Google mapped and used the measuring device on there. On the first page, you can see there's 2,240 feet between the interstate and the top of the backstretch of Remington Park. And I won't go through the other one down there. If you turn to the second page, you can see that the entire width of the ground here at North Platte is 1,790 feet between the interstate and Walker Road. So you could fit the entire piece of ground between the interstate and Remington Park Racetrack, plus another 450 feet at the widest point. So it's not close to the interstate at all, Remington Park, but it's very, very close here to the interstate. And if you look at the third page, I tried to figure out a little bit, just happenstance, to see how many feet from the interstate the racetrack might be here in North Platte. And the best I can come up with, and they did say they could move it a little bit, maybe 150 to 200 feet from the interstate. And I think something would have to be done about the traffic noise and the flashing of the vehicles going by along the backstretch of the track. And such as sound barrier walls or fences and columnar trees planted, that helps. You see a lot of places along the interstate with that. I think it's a lot better to be proactive than reactive if something would happen out there to the riders and the horses being spooked by the traffic and the noise right there next to it. It's pretty loud out there if you ever went out there. And then the last two pages. The first one is Remington Park, and that's what the track is made up of at Remington Park Racetrack. It's like an ant farm looking at it. You can see the rock, crushed limestone, and the cushion pad. And then the next one is Lone Star Park in Grand Prairie, Texas. And it's a different type of makeup for the track surface. And GPS owns both these tracks. I just want to bring it to the attention that there's more to building a racetrack than just grading off dirt. You get it, bring it up to grade according to the water table, and do all this to make it a quality track, or you get soft spots and you won't get the horsemen to come. The horses will be breaking down. You have to really make your track spot on from the first get-go. Do it right the first time. Hopefully, state-of-the-art facilities means from the racetrack on up to the buildings and the railing that you use around the track for safety for the riders and the horses. And I'm just curious if any racetrack or casino feasibility study has ever been presented to the council to show why they want to build it there with that close proximity to the interstate. I would have to guess it'd be for the casino to be seen from the interstate and not the racetrack right next to the interstate. And has there ever been any financial documents shown to the city and the council to back up building a racetrack casino here and another racetrack casino in Gehring that's being proposed, and building up the Hastings racetrack? Seems like they had financial trouble for a few years there running the track, that they couldn't build it up. So I'm just curious, and I think the city should be too, that the money is there to do all this, that you don't get part way and then it all stops. Which I'm sure it probably is, but I would think you'd want to see that. And nothing against quarter horses or thoroughbreds, but the difference between quarter horses, they can run a 220-yard race, and it's, I think the world record just under 12 seconds. So just for instance, if you had your 10 race card in one day, and they ran all 220-yard heats, 12 seconds a race, that would be 120 seconds. So your actual race time would be 2 minutes for all 10 races. I think everybody pretty much knows that the Kentucky Derby is known as the greatest 2 minutes in sports. So them 10 races, actual race time would amount to one Kentucky Derby race time. You still got your minutes in between. And they want to get 30 days of racing, which would be great, because if you race 3 days a week, maybe, you got to have enough horses on the ground to run any more than that. So if you run 3 days a week, that 30 days equals 2.5 months of racing. You just can't race every single day. So I don't know if a lot of people are familiar with that or not. And if you got 3 racetracks that want to run 30 days, Hastings, North Platte, and Gering, supposedly the racing season was stated last at the meeting, the commissioner meeting, April 15th through August 15th. Well, if you got 2.5 months racing here, and they want 30 days in Hastings and Gering both, that'd be 7.5 months of racing. I don't know how you can fit that into a 4-month period, so the figures to me just aren't adding up when it comes to that. I thank you all for what you do, Mr. Mayor and City Council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, could I ask a question of Mr. Mueller?
Certainly.
Is that possible? Before you get away too far? I listened to your testimony at the Plan Commission and then tonight in the detail of your research, but I want to make sure we have a clear understanding of your recommendation to us or your concern. Are you concerned that the track is kind of a farce for the casino, or are you concerned about just that we need to exercise caution? But I'm interested in your opinion about, I guess, maybe what the final conclusion or punchline of your testimony is.
Well, I guess what I'm thinking is they even mentioned that to make it go, they would need the casino in. But what happens if the Racing Commission doesn't give them the license for the casino and they're just stuck with the racetrack then? Are they going to be able to make a go for it? I kind of think the track's coming in just like at 5 or 6 other places around the state. They want to get it in to get the gaming in, is what I believe. Maybe not, I hope not, because I'm a horse race fan first and foremost. I love the horse races, I've been to them all over the country. So I would love to see a horse race track here. I just wish it would be able to accommodate. I'm afraid the turns might be a little too tight for thoroughbreds to handle them. The turns have to have a certain degree of bank, especially for the drainage, and also the backstretch and the home stretch is also banked to help for drainage. So if they made it right, you could fit it, but I think there's just so much to fit in a 77-acre piece of ground that it's all going to be pretty compact. There's not going to be much room to move anything around.
Thank you.
I think there might be more suitable spots, or is what I'm trying to get across.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we still have a public hearing running. Anyone else like to address the council?
Mr. Mayor, my name is Jeff Rosenthal. I live at 1211 South Buffalo Bill Avenue, North Platte. And I have been a thoroughbred owner, breeder, and trainer here in Nebraska. I hold a trainer's license. My interest is in the breeding into this. I have a letter here that I requested from Linda Hoffman, and she is the registrar for the thoroughbred or the Nebraska Breeders Association. She says there are no certified Nebraska bred quarter horses in the state. And I'd like them to explain that to me. She contacted AQHA in Austin, and they don't have any record of any Nebraska-bred quarter horses. And so I don't know how they run races and say they're Nebraska breds. You can have a Nebraska bred that's born in Nebraska, but it's not a certified racehorse for Nebraska bred racing. And just Nebraska this year had 178 thoroughbreds bred, and 105 have reported live colts. And prior to 2021, the average was 47 foals. So what we're seeing is a big increase in thoroughbreds because of the laws that have changed. And quarter horses, you don't have any, basically. You can't take the money and give it to 19 different tracks. I don't care if they're quarter horses or thoroughbreds. Thoroughbred owners and trainers are less likely to come run on a 5/8 mile track like this one. We've had to do it in Nebraska because that's the way it had been. But now the tracks are beginning to expand and become bigger. If you want good quality thoroughbred racing, it won't be here. And I can guarantee it. So basically that's what I wanted to cover. It was nice of Linda to write me this letter. She is not in favor or opposed to what's going on. She's just being honest. And she's come under a lot of heat for telling me this. Now, I'd like to have these people tell me where they get their Nebraska-bred quarter horses that are certified as Nebraska breds, not just quarter horses. Austin can't find any, and they're AQHA. Everybody goes to Austin to register their horses, and then they come to the state for state certification. So that's all unless you have any questions, that's all I have for you.
Thank you.
What was your name, sir?
Rosenthal, Jeff Rosenthal.
Still a public hearing. Okay, thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Ed Zimba. I'm with the Nebraska Quarter Horse Racing Association, and I currently live in Hastings, Nebraska, or just outside of it. I'm here to be supportive of this application. And not just supportive, I'm excited. I am really excited. It's been a long time. The plans that have been laid out for North Platte, for Hastings, where there exists a track right now, and for the Scotts Bluff gearing area, it's incredible. The prospects are amazing. We love our horses in Nebraska. Okay, I think Western Nebraska in particular has been underserved, not as horses, but in terms of horse racing. There hasn't been anything out here in forever, if you will. There has been a track in Hastings. It's been running. We've been looking for a way, and I say we, the Nebraska Quarter Horse Racing Association, working with Brian and Brianne and Hastings Exposition and Racing, now North Platte Exposition and Racing, to move racing forward. I know what the numbers are. This is horse country, and it's quarter horse country, more specifically in western Nebraska. I will tell you that the latest numbers from the American Quarter Horse Association says that there are 80,000 registered quarter horses in Nebraska. There are nearly 14,000 owners of those horses in Nebraska. Okay? 80,000 registered quarter horses within the boundaries of the state. If you take Nebraska and the states that directly border it, Colorado, South Dakota, Kansas, Iowa, etc., okay, 500,000 quarter horses, registered quarter horses with the American Quarter Horse Association in Amarillo. 500,000. If you were to include Oklahoma and Texas, 40% of the world's quarter horse population is in the central United States. And Nebraska is centrally located there. And I don't need to tell you where North Platte is located within Nebraska. There's a strategic plan in place to make this a very attractive and profitable venture for everyone involved. And it's taken some recent legislation to move this idea forward. I have worked with and known Brian, Brianne, the family for a long time, over 2 decades. There is a commitment that has been made, and you're going to have to take my word for this, but if Brian looks at something and says he's going to do it, he's going to do it. It's going to be done properly, correctly, and totally above board. I have all that confidence in the world, and you should too. You will see if this project moves forward. One of the other things that has happened with this application is North Platte Exposition and Racing, the Beckers, have committed 10% of the revenue generated by this to go directly to Nebraska quarter horse racing and the breeders within the state. The horse industry revolves around money. It has to. It's a commitment by me, family members, etc. 10%, that's twice as much as on the thoroughbred side right now. Okay? That may change, but a 10% commitment has been made. The other thing, one other thing, is Brian and Brianne and the Beckers have made an agreement with Global Gaming. It's been alluded to that they run Remington Park in Oklahoma and Lone Star in Texas. Those are premier operations. There is no one better in the country to help you and assist you in developing a positive plan for Nebraska. We look forward to working with you folks, and if you've got any questions of me, I can try and address those. I will say one thing in regards
Sir,
to
I'm
the
sorry,
gentleman.
you're well over your 3 minutes, but we reserve the right to
Very
ask
good.
you questions later on.
And please
Okay.
do. Thank you very much.
Still have an open public hearing. Anyone else wish to make a comment?
Hi, Gina Cooning, 201 South Maloney, North Platte. Just a couple of questions I wondered about. Mr. Jordy had mentioned that Mr. Becker would be able to get this track up and running because he has horses already. That he is going to run Mr. Becker's own horses, right? To my knowledge, if you are running a racetrack, it is illegal for you to run your own horses. Brianne had mentioned at the city council meeting, or the commissioners meeting, that there are 80,000 quarter horses in Nebraska. If there are 80,000 quarter horses now, why is there so few that we can only have one race a year? That's because this is ranch country, and every rancher you know has a quarter horse. They're not racing quarter horses. I just wondered where they came up with their projections. And I just wondered, who is the register for the Nebraska quarter horses? Where do they get that information? I think a casino and a racetrack would be great for North Platte. I just don't believe that this is the one we want, and I think we need to do it right the first time. Thanks.
Thank you. Still a public meeting, folks. Anyone else like to make a comment? Going once, going twice. Council?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion Lucas, second. I'm not sure who won there. Let's say it's polls.
Mr. Mayor, excuse me, would we have an opportunity to respond to those comments?
I think you're going to get some questions,
Okay,
Mr. Jordy. Thank you.
you.
Calling the question and closing the public hearing, please vote. May address us at my pleasure, so the council may ask you a question. If you're asked a question, please come up and respond at the microphone, please. Okay. Council discussion on consider action on a recommendation by the North Platte Planning Commission on an application by Prospect Enterprises LLC for a conditional use permit to allow a horse racetrack and associated improvements located in an I-1, light industrial district in the northeast corner of the intersection of Victoria Lane and East Walker Road.
Mr. Mayor, I'd make a motion to deny.
Okay.
I move that we find a request for a conditional use permit to allow a horse racetrack and associated improvements located in the northeast corner of the intersection of Victoria Lane and East Walker Road does not meet the minimum standards as stated in the North Platte Code of Ordinances, Section 156-3322, and deny the conditional use permit as requested based on the following factual findings. The applicant has not met the following minimum standards stated in the North Platte Code of Ordinances 156-322.
We have a motion.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. This motion, so everyone's clear, would deny this application. What discussion do we have?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Allen, you have the floor.
there's so many things that are going through my mind right now, and I want to thank everybody who came to talk tonight. To me, it looks like the way I'm seeing it is that this plan is just to get the foot in the door. We're going to have this little tiny racetrack, not even a mile, just to get a casino in here. And I guess I am not for that. And I do hope that this body makes a decision about what goes on in North Platte. We have 4 major projects right now, and none of them are completed. And it's like we just keep biting off more and more and more, and it's like we're just overwhelmed. I feel like we're overwhelmed. We need to take a pause for the cause and let some of these things materialize before we keep going on. The other thing is, I want this body to make the decision. I don't want to kick this can down to Lincoln. We need to keep control here in North Platte. So those are my thoughts. I just pause for the cause. If we're going to do a racetrack, then let's get it 150 acres, not 73 acres where it's just crammed in there. And thoroughbreds, I've been told that they need a bigger track to run on. And to me, it's just minimizing something to get the casino in here, and I guess I'm opposed to that. Thank you.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Lucas.
I might provide a little bit of an alternative perspective. If the motion to deny is denied, I'd intend to follow with the motion for approval, but I guess some thoughts is, I feel like we've been pretty well informed. I mean, if you go back to November 3rd of last year, the voters in Nebraska passed initiatives 429 to 31 with approximately 65%, which is an overwhelming vote. It's funny, in my background, I used to think 65% was 15 north of 50, but it's 30 north of 35. And I've learned after going through an election that you get north of about 53 or 4 or 5%, and it's a pretty big majority because you got to count down in addition to up from 50. But here in Lincoln County, it was tighter at 54%. So it was tighter, but there was still an 8-point swing. And so I just don't feel it's the purpose of the city council to make a sociological or social economic determination on this, because I feel like the voters of Nebraska made that decision less than a year ago. So what I'm interested in is what would we get, what the impact would be on the city. You know, we had a unanimous opinion from the Planning Commission, and after all the years I spent on the Planning Commission, I have a lot of regard for that body. And I think, you know, what I was most interested in is the protection of that development agreement, that the city doesn't end up with a very expensive infrastructure project down the road because we don't have a good development agreement. But I think the recommendation of the Planning Commission addressed that well. I look at our role on this as we have 3 zonings that allow a racetrack under conditional use. That's ag transitional, I-1 and I-2. And we're really here to make a permitted decision that was, racetracks were contemplated in our zoning ordinances and were named in 3 of them. And so I think we're here today to review that and look at that. But I don't feel that this is a moral compass or a socioeconomic decision by the city council, because I feel like the voters of the state of Nebraska made that decision. Now, with that said, I appreciate the testimony on the racetrack. Was very interesting, and I thank those who came for it. I'm of the opinion that I'm hopeful we can get some racing that meshes well with Nebraska Land Days and our heritage in this area. And to me, that will be gravy, and I hope we get that. And it sounds like there's folks committed to bringing that. But I'm interested in going into this knowing that it's really the bridge to a casino project under the Nebraska law and under the voters' intention, and that I'm hopeful our area brings the support to this to make the racing, kind of the extra gravy on top, even though that's what's presented first under the law. So anyway, that's my perspective on it. I just respectfully disagree with some of the testimony so far.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Bowles, you have the floor.
And I'd like to touch on that a little bit. As far as being overwhelmed with projects that are going on in this community, you kind of have to make hay while the sun shines. None of these projects I am actively working on, so I don't feel overwhelmed with it. I just drive around town and watch our good fortune be produced in front of our eyes. We are here to discuss the proposal that is in front of us. We don't have a thoroughbred track proposed in front of us. We have a quarter horse track with the possibility of thoroughbreds being run in front of us. I don't know anything about racing. I don't know a whole heck of a lot about gambling. That doesn't matter. I'm not here to discuss the pros and cons of thoroughbred versus quarter horse. That doesn't matter to me. I hardly know what a horse looks like, besides driving down the interstate. As far as economic development, the reason I asked the pointed question to the attorney is I wanted to ascertain that North Platte is not going to have to put a lot of infrastructure in for this project. These folks are coming to us, and I don't see, besides some potential unintended consequences down the road, which I think are very minor in relationship to the overall project, I don't see this costing North Platte any money. We charge a 4% occupancy tax on hotels in our community for the sole purpose. 2% of that goes to the Golden Spike, 2% goes to the Visitors Bureau, and that dollar amount gets disseminated down to specific organizations. That dollar amount equates to approximately a little north of $1 million. These folks are looking to bring little north of $1 million into our community with zero investment from us. So from a fiduciary and a financial standpoint, this seems like a pretty good deal for North Platte and our tax base in order for us to look at things and future endeavors down the road. Thank you.
I just want to make a comment. I don't like a motion to deny, because it's easy when you say we make the motion, yes, I'm in favor of it. It's the reverse. So if you are in favor of denying it, you vote yes. If you're not in favor, you vote no. To me, it's confusing. I wish this motion would be withdrawn. And I can tell you right now, I'm going to vote against the negative motion. I'm not going to say I'm going to vote for the affirmative, but I'd like to have this motion withdrawn and start off and do the proposed motion as a positive motion. That way, they know whether we're in favor of it or we're against it. I just asked the people who made the motion if they would withdraw it.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Reeker, you have the floor.
I think that's a legitimate comment, Jim. I hadn't even thought
Yeah,
of it.
and I'm not, I just think we
I
gotta,
don't have a problem withdrawing it. I don't have a problem withdrawing it and restating it from an affirmative position, albeit then that would be reflected in the vote,
yes, I mean,
whether it passes or fails.
that's true. That's what I'm saying. All I'm saying is then we know if you're in favor of it, it's gonna be yes. If you're opposed to it, it's no.
I don't have a
No, it's
problem with that.
clarification.
I
We
would,
Can't say there's a mistake or there's something like that.
I would withdraw my motion.
Okay.
Mi-
Record
Mr.
show, Mr. Reeker's motion is withdrawn.
Mr. Mayor, could I offer an alternative motion?
Hold on
Okay.
just a second.
Well,
Let's
Mr.
be clear
Reeker,
about what we're doing here,
Mr.
okay?
Reeker was pretty fast last time, so.
Thank
Let's
you, Ed.
offer a little prayer. You have the floor, Mr. Lucas.
Mr. Mayor, excuse me, does Mr. Woods have to withdraw
think he
any of
does.
his action?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Woods.
I have no problem with that. I don't see it affecting the outcome one way or the other. It can be stated positively. I have no problem.
So would you be willing to withdraw your second?
I will withdraw my second.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the clarification. Mr. Lucas, you now have the floor.
Yeah, out of courtesy to Mr. Reeker, the reason I want to get rid of this, I have one little minor tweak to the motion to approve I want to get included, so I don't intend to be.
You beat me.
To step on your toes here, Ed. I move that we find the request for the conditional use permit to allow a horse race track and associated improvements located in the northeast corner of the intersection of Victoria Lane and East Walker Road meets the minimum standards stated in the North Platte Code of Ordinances, Section 156.322, and approve and grant the conditional use permit requested with the condition that all elements of the application are complied with and with the following conditions. Number one, a fully executed development agreement with the City of North Platte must be in place prior to construction. The development agreement will include but not be limited to regulations regarding water, sanitary sewer, subdivision drainage, storm water management, landscaping, parking, driveways, paving, decommissioning, traffic, electric utility layout, and designated smoking areas. Construction of the track and infrastructure, including utilities, drainage, and steep street paving, must be completed within 2 years of the date of issuance of the conditional use approval. The track must be constructed at a minimum of 5/8 of a mile, meets the minimum standards stated in the North Platte Code of Ordinances, Section 156-322, and approve and grant the conditional use permit requested with the conditions that all elements of the application are complied with, and with the following conditions based on the following factual findings. One, the use shall conform to all applicable ordinances, laws, and regulations of any governmental jurisdiction. Two, the use shall have adequate water, sewer, and drainage facilities. Three, ingress and egress shall be so designated as to minimize traffic congestion in the public streets. Four, the use shall in all other respects conform to the applicable regulations of the district in which it is located. Five, the use shall be in harmony with the character of the area and the most appropriate use of the land.
Second.
Motion Lucas, second Vols. Okay, we are now discussing, for the sake of clarity, a rephrased motion in which, at some point in the future, we will likely vote. Okay?
Mr. Mayor, on the revision, I'm kind of curious, in deference to the folks that are wanting this, to get this done. Street paving, that's a pretty broad item, which could entail a lot of money. Do we want to try to define that a little closer, or what do we want to do with that? Or do we want to do anything with it?
Councilman Raker, the intent of the development agreement as part of the motion is so that we can clarify all of those things, we being, assuming this is approved, the city as well as the developers, on exactly who has to do what and pay for what.
Okay.
Since we were perhaps lacking a little bit of information in terms of how much traffic might be present on the road or something like that, this would allow us some opportunities to figure all that out and agree on it prior to anything being constructed.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Lucas.
a comment on that, Ed, I think you're bringing up a really important point, that our community now has a lot of projects going on, like Ms. Tryon commented about. And I think we've historically had really defined agreements when we've had redevelopment agreements because there's been TIF incentives and different things. But I think on any of these larger projects that have major impact on city infrastructure, having development agreements with them, I think is very, very important. Because I know if you go back in the history of North Platte, and even as my time as a council member, sometimes at the end, there's been some surprises on projects of who's paying for what. And so I'm pleased to see the focus on that. The reason I carried it in the designated smoking area item was in the Planning Commission meeting. Mr. Hawes, I think in representing the organization that he has represented with Community Connections, had expressed that. I've talked to him a little bit of that offline, and they were agreeable to that, I think, in the Planning Commission meeting. And so I just wanted to carrot that in, because I was glad to see Mr. Hawes in that organization at least bring our attention to that, because it's frankly something I wouldn't have thought about. And I guess last thing, I'll be quiet then, is I am concerned that if we don't, as a community, embrace this, we might stub our toe if Ogallala or Dawson County grabs it and our residents are all going there and spending money that could be done in North Platte. Because I think this area, if you look at the relationship to Colorado, Wyoming, the interstate is really a phenomenal location. And their second choice might be, for all I know, in Gothenburg or in Paxton or in Ogallala. And how big of fools are we if we take the downsides that no doubtedly come? There are some things that are wonderful about having a gaming operation, but we don't get any of the upsides as a community because we passed on it and our neighbors take it.
Okay, I'm going to invoke mayor's prerogative because I have some questions. So hold on just a second, guys. I'll let you gentlemen decide who wants to answer this question, but I am curious. One of the folks that stood up had a discussion about the quality of the track, of the construction of the materials. What's your plan? Please tell us who you are. So,
Mayor, Council, Sean Boyd with Global Gaming Solutions and the Chickasaw Nation. Honored to be here and happy to answer that question. So we've engaged Populous, which is the leading feasibility study group in the country when it comes to building facilities like this. We've worked with them before, have enjoyed work with them on this project thus far. We will build the highest rated standard that's in existence today for this track. As alluded to before, we do have two different tracks, and that's because we acquired those tracks, both Remington Park and Lone Star Park, within the last 15 years, and both were constructed differently, though both run quarter horses and thoroughbreds in Oklahoma City and in Dallas. So we enjoy the ability to operate on varying turfs, but we will work with Populous, the leading feasibility group, to both provide the feasibility of the track as well as the A&E work on the track. And we're also involved with, we brought on Olson Engineering here out of Nebraska to work with us on civil engineering as well. So to answer, we won't be able to say until we actually do the topo work on the ground itself, but we will take that recommendation from Populous and implement that plan.
okay, thank you. Can you answer who would like to answer the why this location question? I think that's a valid question.
Yeah, I think it's a great location. So, yeah. We use a proprietary model. We call it a gravity model. And we look at the three sites here. I'm sure you're wondering for your specific community, how might additional tracks in, say, Gering or the development growth in Hastings impact North Platte. The way the gravity works in the entertainment business specifically and gaming, which includes horse racing, I think that's what gets a little convoluted in new states. And Board Member Lucas said it well. Those racinos across America provide some of the best horse entertainment there is around. The purses are higher. Everything works better out of that gaming component that's involved with horse racing. North Platte contemplates, as Jordy referenced earlier, roughly 33% of the attendees will come from out of state. So when we looked at the state of Nebraska. Hastings really draws more from the east and southern Nebraska. North Platte, as you know, both with highway traffic being an ancillary really component to our model, we strictly look at the gravity of the surrounding areas, the entertainment options of the surrounding areas and counties around North Platte. And North Platte stands on its own. We intend to race roughly 50% of our days in North Platte. The other 50% of those days would be raced in Scottsbluff-Gehring and in Hastings. But this would be the majority of the race days. So if we're going to race 40 to 50 days a year, potentially in year 4 and beyond, as referenced earlier, upwards of 30 of those days would be in North Platte. This, because of both the highway infrastructure and the components of manufacturing, the rail yard that runs through this town, and in the surrounding counties, this project can stand on its own without having to worry about competition from Omaha, Lincoln, even Gehring, Scottsbluff, things of that nature. If you guys are able to move and be first in what I refer to in our model as central western Nebraska, you'll have the competitive advantage and be able to draw the revenues that we've proposed here.
Thank you. My next question has to do with the number of certified quarter horses in Nebraska. Who can speak to that question?
I will make an attempt to explain this. The American Quarter Horse Association maintains a registry. It's the largest registry in the world for registering horses. In this case, it happens to be quarter horses. The AQHA's records from 2020, not 2021, 2020 say there are 79,428, okay? This is from the annual report. You can look it up online, okay? And there are 13,569 owners in Nebraska of those registered quarter horses in Nebraska. There are registered quarter horses. There are registered Nebraska bred, okay? And a gentleman earlier said something about that. In order to have a registered racing quarter horse in the state, you have to register the mare prior to foaling. In fact, September 1st is a deadline, okay? You have to register the mare while she's in foal. Then, once the mare foals, then that foal needs to be registered. That then becomes a Nebraska-bred racing registered quarter horse. There is a registry in the state for thoroughbreds. Someone earlier referenced, I think it was Julie Hoffman, that's with the Thoroughbred Breeder's Office, okay? There's thoroughbreds and quarter horses. The quarter horse registry for racing resides with me, okay? There are currently 14 or 15, I don't have the number right in front of me, of registered Nebraska-bred racing foals, okay? The state of Nebraska requires...
Quick question, sorry.
Yes, sir.
I'm assuming foal means pregnant? Yes.
In foal.
In foal, okay.
Okay.
Just want to make sure I was on the right
Pregnant,
path.
okay? Yes,
Okay.
no, please.
14 or 15.
The state of Nebraska requires that you run, if you run a race meet, on every race day, there has to be a race for Nebraska breds only. Only one race, but that is an absolute requirement. It's statute, okay? The other races, regardless of whether they're a quarter horse track or a thoroughbred track, those other races can be horses that were born in Nebraska, born in Louisiana, Oklahoma, wherever. It doesn't matter. There are conditions that are written that dictate what horses are eligible to run in what races, okay? That help? But
I think so. Is it fair to say that with the change in the recent law change, we've now started breeding Nebraska registered quarter horses? Is that the case?
Okay, the national average is, and a lady referred to it earlier, we have 80,000 registered quarter horses in the state. national average says 10% of those are race bred or have race breeding, okay? Now, because of the opportunities that may present themselves, assuming approval here, they will be in North Platte, the opportunities for races for Nebraska-bred racing quarter horses will improve. And with that, the purses will improve and the demand for those horses will increase. We are seeing an increase, significant increase in interest, not only from people who live in Nebraska, but people who live out of state who would have their mare brought here, registered, and foaled out in the state to make them eligible to run in those races because of demand. It's about the money. Makes sense? Other questions?
Okay.
Please.
I think I followed your logic. Thank you.
I'm the registrar. If you have any questions about that,
Okay.
let me know. There's two: thoroughbred registry, quarter horse registry. Quarter horse registry.
Okay. Is that something that, how did you gain that title? I'm just curious.
Short straw,
Anyone else have any questions of these gentlemen? Seems like we should have some questions.
Mr. Mayor, I have some questions.
Okay.
I don't know where my letter went. Apparently, and Mr. Ed Zimba, I'm confused on this registrar business, I guess.
Yes, sir.
I was under the understanding that the Nebraska State Gaming Association Commission had given that registrar responsibility to the Nebraska Thoroughbred Breeders Association.
Sir, that's not correct.
And how
That registry, a while ago, I've been doing this a long time. There was a lady in Burwell, Nebraska, that took care of that. When she retired, the Nebraska Racing Commission office took over those responsibilities for the quarter horse side of things. The Nebraska Thoroughbred Breeders has always existed, and they have an office in Grand Island, okay? But the Nebraska Racing Commission took over those responsibilities from Jeannie Ruverka when she gave those up. They didn't lose the drawing, okay? It takes a little bit of time. It's not a big responsibility. Certainly without those numbers, it's going to increase substantially, I believe. But we maintain the registry for the Nebraska quarter horse racing bred foals. Mares, stallions, foals.
So you have to certify them then before they can race in the
Correct.
race to qualify?
Correct.
Okay. And how many of those horses did you say are in Nebraska now?
Currently registered in that fashion, 14 or 15.
And how old are those horses, do you know?
I couldn't tell you without looking at the records. Sorry, it doesn't take up a lot of my time, but they,
They're 4-8, they can't be over 13. We
Right,
just can't
right.
run them over 13.
Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
Fair question, yes.
You know, just as a point of clarification, there may be 80,000 registered quarter horses in the state. I don't want to even try to discredit that number. I wouldn't have any idea. You apparently know. But that just because there's a lot of registered quarter horses doesn't mean there's a lot of horses that are eligible to race.
Again, national average is about 10%. So if you use that here in Nebraska, about 8,000 of them would have race breeding in there. And then it comes down to the age of the horses, whether owners want to avail of themselves of those opportunities. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Mayor, may I continue?
Yes, please.
My question, I think specifically is related back to the Beckers. You folks operate a racetrack, I believe, in Hastings, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
How long have you been doing that?
Oh, I think since about 2002.
Okay, how many races do you have there a year?
I have one. See, we don't have small track fund. They took that away from us when Ed was running the track back in 92. 93.
Fauna and all the other tracks get a small track fund to be able to operate. The quarter horses and thoroughbreds split in 72 when Ed took it over, and that's why they've been
76.
or 76.
Somewhere.
So he's put over 4 million in purses on his own.
I have personally paid for every day. We kept it running because if we wouldn't have, the quarter horse breed would be gone. Because none of the thoroughbred tracks wanted them. That's why that license laid there dormant from 92 to 2002 when I took it. Got it from the state of Nebraska.
So did I understand you right, you put in $4 million in purses in how many years?
It's cost us $4 million in 20 years to keep that thing alive because it's no secret, it was all an insurance policy for the gaming. But I want to bring that quarter horse breed up, and the only way you can bring it up is purse money. So we're going to give 10% of that casino money for purses and breed awards. We'll bring that breed program back up.
2% is going to the breeds. I'm going to clarify. My name is Brianne Becker. I'm from Hastings, Nebraska. I've been working on this the last 5 years, so the ground and everything that you guys are wondering about, the 77 acres, we hired a director of racing to run the 3 tracks, and she is one of the most well-known females across the United States that is also one of the only women stewards in the nation. So she's going to do everything to keep the horses safe as well when they were saying about being close to the interstate.
I'm confused.
Okay, so the 4 million, you're probably wondering how I could spend that kind of money.
Well, I really am. I think this is supposed to be a for-profit business. I'm not sure why I would spend $4 million on one race a year and then not make any money.
Well, we could never get to simulcasting because the thoroughbreds fought us because we're geographically too close to Fundraiser Park. So we just kept doing it because we kept going back to the legislature to get more gaming, could never get it. Had petitions, couldn't get it. Finally, we were successful and got the petition passed. But that way we will have the ability to have the Quarter Horse Association send out letters to all owners in surrounding states to start folding these folds in Nebraska. Because we'll have live days. They would never raise them before. We raised the only quarter horses in the state for 20 years that were registered, legal to run under the Racing Commission.
So do you race horses outside of Nebraska too?
I haven't for the last few years.
We have ran at Remington.
I used to run them all over the
We
country.
have ran, across the country. And that's why Ed, he's been getting calls every day from people asking how they can foal their babies for specifically quarter horses. We're giving 10% compared to the thoroughbreds, Fawner, Lincoln, Omaha, they're giving 5% of their purses.
Or their casino money. They're giving 5% of
their
their casino
purses.
money for purses, and we're giving 10. So
Okay.
we know we will be able to bring this quarter horse population of babies up. Back in the 90s, what'd you have? How many, or 80s when that was booming? We had 3 tracks going, they were folding all over. But there was money. But in 92, the wheels fell off and nobody registered because there was no tracks left. And nobody was going to register them with us in the time we've been running this since 02 to now because we just got down to running one day. When we started this, I used to run 8 or 9 races. It cost, about 120 a day. Well, the statute says 1 race, 1 day a year, so we went to 1 race. But by the time you raise these things and you run them, and it costs money to bring the stewards in and all the racing people, in the 20 years, it's $4 million.
So this wasn't a break-even proposition?
No, it was, but I'm gonna be honest with you, it was, an insurance policy for the gaming.
Okay. And I don't have any problem with horse racing.
But I've been in it for 20 years. It's not like I just fell out, came in here.
Yeah,
You know, there's a lot of people wanting this. There's a lot of people that said I was stupid in them 20 years, but they're not looking that way now. Because Hastings is going. What I don't want to see is, this is a great geographical area. What I don't want to see is somebody come in Ogallala or somewhere else, because you'll never get it back. Because in the statute it says you can't have a racetrack in a geographical area that's competing with another track. And if somebody got awarded in Ogallala, you would never get it, ever. That's like York put in that application, that it's too close to Grand Island. Bellevue's too close to Omaha. We're 140 miles from Grand Island. We're not affecting another track in a geographical area.
Okay.
But if somebody, and it could happen. They already applied or applying for one in Kimball. But it could happen in Ogallala. Then you're too close to a geographical area because it hurts your numbers. That's why it's a land grab. It's the first in. Because if somebody got awarded in Ogallala, it wouldn't happen here.
And it is a good location. Everyone is bashing the location, and I think that it is a great location. I also would like to clarify, if I could, Mayor, about the lady saying about the 80,000 horses not being race bred. My dad, all of his race horses that he got done running, I took over and I turned them into barrel horses. And I was very successful with that. So there are a lot of studs in the state of Nebraska that are barrel horses, that they would be running babies at this track.
Oh, I will clarify that further. 80,000, you're 10% race bred. That means they can be brood mares. You can turn them into brood mares because you can't run them horses. They have to be for brood mare purpose only. Because of that 80,000, they still weren't registered in my office or Ed's office at the time they folded. Does that make sense? It's kind of complicated. But I know you.
I
talked to Tom Sage on the deal, and
I trust your comments on that.
it's a complicated deal.
Where I was having some real confusion is I was apparently given some wrong information as to who is actually the registrar.
Yeah.
And how this all fits together. So.
Yeah, they never transferred anything. It was when Nebraska horsemen split, is basically when it was. Because the thoroughbreds basically didn't want the quarter horse license. Ed stood up, took it over, and my dad kept running in Hastings. So.
Okay. If I could make some other comments, Mr. Mayor. Well, I would like to comment on Mr. Lucas's comments about whether or not this should be a sociological decision. When I look at us as council members, about every meeting we get to vote on whether we're going to have a conditional use permit for alcohol sales at some type of a venue. Right there, we're making a sociological decision. We're making a decision as to whether we think this is good for our community, and it's made oftentimes from a moral perspective. We make sociological decisions all the time when we write our statutes, when we set our speed limits, when the legislature sets the penalties for various infractions. We make sociological determinations all the time when we write our statutes. And so I do believe that this is a very important sociological decision that we have to make here tonight. When I spoke with the folks at the Gaming and Racing Commission, I think I've got that right. Maybe it's the Racing and Gaming Commission. I'm not sure. But I think 2.5% of the money proceeds is going to go for helping people that are addicted to gambling. I think that should tell us something about the sociological impacts of gambling. I'm not a gambler, not very inclined to turn loose of my money that easily, I guess. But apparently some people are, and my concern is are we going to be putting another opportunity in front of our public people to indulge themselves in something that could be detrimental to them and their families? It's one thing to have to drive to the Rosebud Reservation or to Council Bluffs. It's another thing to drive 20 blocks or 40 blocks or a mile or two to a casino here in town. And that will have an impact on how people locally spend their money. People that may go to the casino in North Platte probably wouldn't drive to Council Bluffs or to Rosebud. And conversely, some of the people that drive to Rosebud and Council Bluffs probably won't come out here, just because the reasons of their own sociological reasons. So I think we have to really consider that. I also learned that the Gaming and Racing Commission will have one of their own law enforcement officers at the casino 24/7 whenever the casino is in operation. And we may be wise to have a Lincoln County Sheriff's deputy or one of our own policemen out there 24/7 while that facility is in operation, with the idea that the casino would have to reimburse the entity that's providing the enforcement, the law enforcement. And this was maybe even a recommendation. So I think there are some real costs to the city. They may not be dollars and cents costs. But when I look at my job as a city council member, I don't see my job strictly as trying to figure out how much tax revenue we can generate for the city. I think if I look at my job strictly as how much money we can bring into the city from a tax standpoint, I'm narrowing my focus to what I don't. Then I'm overlooking what could be the very best benefit or distraction for our community. And I think we need to weigh that very seriously when we make our decision tonight. I'm also concerned that we've got two major truck stops to the east of us, about 3/4 of a mile, something like that. I didn't measure it off, but pretty close probably, maybe a mile. Those people come in and out day and night. They don't live here. They may be there for an hour. They may be there for 5 hours, just enough to get their rest so they can go down the road. Some of those folks are probably going to go to the casino. How many young women are going to be enticed into prostitution because of that? Because they've got a drug problem? That's a good way for them to make money to pay for their drugs. I think we have a sociological responsibility to take those things into consideration when we cast our vote. Because those people are the people that we live with. And we do make sociological decisions every time we vote. And so I just throw that out as my comments. I'm not opposed to racing, horse racing. I probably wouldn't go, but I am opposed to the casino. And there's two different items, but unfortunately, the way the law is written, the way the amendment to the Constitution, I believe it is, was written, those two are very inextricably linked. Now, conceivably, I suppose, as this project goes on down the road, we could give them a conditional use permit right now to allow a horse track, and in the future refuse them a permit to have a casino. And that's a real possibility. But I, for one, don't want to go down that track, down that road, sorry. No distraction on you folks, sorry. So anyway, my comments, I have some real concerns about the impact on our community, not from a dollars and cents standpoint. Dollars and cents aren't everything. They really aren't. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask a question of global gaming solutions?
Of course.
We haven't touched on things outside of the horse track and the casino, but I've had a number of constituents talk to me about being excited over maybe other entertainment options that would come with the casino. what could North Platte expect for if folks were not interested in gaming, but were interested in going out to dinner or listening to music or dancing or shopping or whatever? What would that offering look like?
Well, great question. First of all, we're extremely community-minded in every community we operate in, so we actually go in and form partnerships with local hotels, restaurants, retail establishments, places that we can partner with to put on events. In Oklahoma this summer, obviously coming out of the pandemic, indoor concerts are still a challenge. They're just starting to come back. So what we've done is we've taken 3 of our rural properties that are more rural than, say, Remington Park in Oklahoma City, that are in communities of, say, 25 to 45,000 people. And we've done an outdoor concert series this summer. Call it Beats and Bites. And we partner with food trucks from local areas, as local as we can get. And we've brought in, call it mid-tier, mainly country acts, some oldies acts, and we put on 9 of those this summer with great success. We've had huge family turnouts, bounce houses, things of that nature that we would certainly do during the months where weather's appropriate. Concerts in and of themselves at the horse track facility have been contemplated, and I think that's something you could expect from an entertainment perspective, that we would put on those outdoor events in that area. We'd also like to partner with the business community, and we have space within the grandstands and the casino itself to host meetings, weddings, banquets, events, use of that space for 365 days a year. When you can only run horses a certain number of years or number of days in a year anyway, you have to find ways to use that space creatively, and we want to partner with the community to do that. So it's going to be a combination of things we can do at the facility, along with who we can partner with in the community to bring their brands and their efforts and their small businesses in this community forward. We partner with wineries in many of our Oklahoma communities and in Texas as well. We partner with breweries. We partner with restaurants to feature their brands. We're only going to have inside the casino roughly 50 seats, call it, inside of our restaurant. Dining, when you're in a gaming experience, is part of that experience. I think you could expect menu from burgers, high-quality catfish, steaks, things of that nature to entertain the guests. But we actually want to partner with and advertise other brands in the city. Our goal isn't to be your newest, largest F&B operator. It's a necessity to feed the guests that want to eat while they're in that experience. But we have eyeballs in a 24/7, 365-day-a-year operation. Each slot machine, for instance, has a new age high-tech screen on the front of the slot machine. And what we do is we go into our especially our rural properties, and we partner with these businesses, and we get their logos, we get animations from their businesses, and we advertise their businesses at no cost in these communities to feature those brands on an annual basis.
Thank you.
You bet. Any follow-ups to that?
I'm also appreciative of you guys being here and being so transparent with the casino and the horse track in combination. I thank you for that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And we think it's important to just be upfront about that. I mean, there would not be the growth of horse racing in Nebraska without the element of a casino and without the element of responsible gaming inside of that casino to fund the horse racing growth. We operate in Texas today, and I think if you asked any Texas horse racing operator, because there's not gaming in the state of Texas, it's not a profitable business today in the state of Texas. It's not profit-making in the great city of Dallas today. Sometime in the future, there may be that opportunity to bolster horse racing in Texas with gaming, but they don't even in Texas have what Nebraska has before them today. And the last thing I'd love to just say is, this is the most highly regulated industry, casino, of all, even more than banking. It is a privilege to have a gaming license individually and corporately in different markets, in different jurisdictions. It is not a right, and we've always said that inside our organization, it is not a right to have a gaming license. There are many executives at companies you've heard of, MGM, Caesars, Harrah's, that only stay in this industry for so long because they end up not being able to be licensed in new jurisdictions. All of our employees will be absolutely able to meet the licensing requirement in this state. When we open an office here, all of our executives that will reside in Nebraska will have to own and operate under the guidelines set by the state of Nebraska Gaming and Racing Commission. And I just wanted to voice that we don't see that as a right, we see that as a privilege. Thank you, guys. And ladies and gentlemen.
Can I ask another question before you get sat down?
Sorry.
Sorry, I'm sorry, Mr.
No, I
Lucas.
need
were you
to-
done?
I think
It
I've
was
spent my
a
time
good
tonight.
drive. I appreciate standing up.
This is something that I've wondered about for a long time. With the advent of cell phones, I'm not a gambler, but I could gamble using my cell phone.
Yeah.
I guess to form the question simply, how much has the ability for people to gamble on a cell phone or a computer or some other device affected casino gambling?
It's a great question. And it's actually the reason that sports betting, I believe, was already legislated and passed in your state. And if you look at many states, it's why sports betting is being brought forward. There's a larger black market in sports betting that leads to black market iGaming today. If you were to get on your phone and just look at Bovada.com, that's a company that operates out of Canada, quote unquote offshore. It's actually on an Indian reservation in Canada. And they operate one of the most successful black market iGaming, sports betting is the guys on the front of it, operations in the world. So what's happening state by state is you're seeing sports betting being brought forward, and it does become a socioeconomic debate when you talk about things like sports betting, betting on Nebraska collegiate athletics, for instance, which currently is not allowed in your state statute. But if something were brought before you as an elected official, I think you're having to look at the viability of a true black market that exists today versus turning that on its head and legalizing that activity to try to bring it forward. And it's proven in states that where sports betting is legalized, what we've seen is roughly 50% of the market converts over to the legal market. And somewhat 50% of the black market still chooses to use a device, for instance. iGaming, when it's legalized in a state, it's still a very forward-thinking, progressive business, if you will. It's only legalized in 2 states today in the country. Being able to place a bet on a blackjack hand or play a slot machine on your phone with real money is not highly legalized today. Sports betting is really paving the road for that to then be legalized down the road. There's just the Wire Act federally creates a lot of challenges for legalization of iGaming in a 24/7 everyday environment, say in a state like Nebraska. Does that make sense? We haven't actually seen it impact the growth of our business in the retail space. It's more the fact that there is a black market that exists today that elected officials have to consider when they make those decisions.
Okay, thank you. One more question, well, probably more than one, but what is your intended operations, environment, and plan? If the casino is approved, would you be open 24/7, 365, or what's your thought process there?
We would. Yeah, the state statute allows that today. So unless that were to change, it would be a 24/7, 365-day-a-year business that we would be open in the casino. The security surveillance, when the 220-plus jobs were mentioned, those are roughly 50 positions. It's a very large department within our operation, and it's something that we take extremely seriously. So being 24/7, 365, security and surveillance is highly contemplated in that model. And all of the operations we run today, yeah, all of the 24 casinos we operate today are 24/7.
Have you moved into or created these casinos/racetracks in other parts of the country? And if so, how has that gone?
Yes. From a racetrack perspective, we did with Lone Star in Grand Prairie, and it's gone extremely well. You hear Lone Star referenced as one of the shining stars in the racing industry, and as I referenced before, it's not necessarily the most profit-making position to be in for us, but it does go very well, and it attracts hundreds of thousands of customers into that facility. Most recently, we've partnered with landless tribes in Oklahoma. These are tribes that not to go deep into Oklahoma history, but they were not granted land when they came from wherever their ancestral lands were during the Trail of Tears, like 32 of the roughly 32 tribes in Oklahoma were. So we've actually worked with them and the federal government to get them land in federal trust, then finance and build a casino for them, because Oklahoma doesn't actually require a horse racing facility. You can truly build a casino. Only tribes can build casinos in Oklahoma, but you have to have federally recognized land to do so. So we've partnered with 2 tribes to get them land and trust, and then we manage those operations for them for a management agreement. But the net proceeds of that go to that Indian tribe today. And much like we would approach this facility, we've had one in Guyman, Oklahoma, that's been open for almost 3 years now. Is that right? We are now contemplating a hotel and an expansion for that tribe at that facility. Some have asked us, and the Beckers did originally as well, would you not come into a town in North Platte with I-80 and all the traffic here and drop a hotel in? And our answer is always absolutely not. We don't believe you should lead with that infrastructure. We believe the business should actually justify the incremental growth of this facility. We do have land, and we have contemplated that there could be an expansion of an event center, for instance, potentially, and certainly a hotel 3, 5, 7 years down the road. But that's only after we've evaluated the market and the business itself and how it operates here.
And approximately what size is the community? Is it Guyman?
Yes.
Okay.
Smaller than North Platte. Yeah, it's sub 20,000 in Guyman today. And that draws from, so if you look at the panhandle of Oklahoma, Guyman's actually an extremely diverse community. There's something like 30 different ethnicities that live in that community. You've got southern Kansas, the panhandle also of Texas, and a little bit of New Mexico that come into there. And we look at North Platte very similarly to Guyman. In fact, the model for this facility, from a revenue perspective, without sharing all the details of that, models out almost exactly like Guyman, Oklahoma does. What's that? 11.5 in Guyman. Yeah.
So approximately half the size of North Platte then.
Correct.
Okay, speaking of revenue, I know that casinos are generally excellent at projecting the number of visitors and approximately how much the average visitor generates, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Could you offer some thoughts around how many people we might reasonably expect, numbers of cars, that sort of thing? I realize these are all estimates, but
yeah.
I know that you guys do that
We
well.
do.
So could you tell us what you think, please?
Our finance guys require it of us. That guy right there. Very much so. So we have studied every bit of this market, and that's where Brian Jordy referenced the 1.7 annual visitors. We believe that's a very sustainable, which you're probably looking at 3 years from when we break ground to hit that number, to be in a sustainable year. So 1.7 visitors is, you take that divided by 1.3 visitors per car, and then you can back that number into number of cars that would visit the facility. And then you start to look at midweek. We talk in our business midweek versus weekend traffic. And you're roughly on any given day, obviously there's more weekdays than there are weekends, but you're looking at anywhere from 20 to 25% of the daily traffic on a weekday versus a Friday night, Saturday, Sunday morning at that facility. But the 1.7 is derived off of a very, very specific target that's our model we've never missed on in terms of average spend per customer. Then that backs into, somebody is listening to this in the state of Nebraska already questioning and writing on the back of a map right now. They know they took everything we've said tonight, and that's we call it GGR, gross gaming revenue. So it's not a hidden number. I mean, you can back into that number just as we've listened to others in other states and backed into that number. But you are, I don't know how you want to look at this. If Caesars in Las Vegas is what you think that the best casino is, and Guyman, Oklahoma is probably right in the middle, and then we have casinos that have 16 slot machines in them in a gas station in rural Oklahoma. That'd be at the lower end of the tier. You would be surprised. Your revenue is really going to be top half rural gaming, especially post-COVID, has been incredibly successful as an entertainment option for individuals that lost that entertainment option in other ways. They found that this form of entertainment is something that they enjoy.
I believe I have run out of questions.
I'll stay here, just in case there might be others, and I'm happy to come back, obviously.
Mr. Garrick, you have the floor.
I don't have any questions, so you could go ahead and sit down if you want. Just some comments. I had a lunch with Ron Felton. He's a gambling counselor here in town, so he couldn't be here tonight, but he wanted me to make some points. I told him I would. His statement, or his points are, we will see more bankruptcies, drug and alcohol addiction. He no longer sees any just simple gambling addicted people. There's always a drug and alcohol component tied to it. In his estimation, he believes that most of the money will come from within a 75-mile radius. Now, he doesn't have the analytics you do, but that's his opinion. And his last point, actually, I hadn't heard discussed, is the reduction of Keno money. We had our budgeting recently, and the estimation for next year is $190,000. Well, our Keno money is going to be reduced based on this casino. So I told him I'd make those points for him since he couldn't be here. On a personal note, I actually voted against the casino law. I was surprised when it went through. But I think I agree with Mr. Lucas. The voters have spoken, 54% in Lincoln County, and I think we need to honor that. Thank you.
Council, any other thoughts, questions, comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Reeker, you have the floor.
I appreciate what you said, Councilman Garrick. The sociological costs, we can't put a dollar and cents figure on. It's impossible. My concerns are, and I didn't voice this earlier, but, and you kind of alluded to that, Brad, when you went through some of your comments there, that gambling is not a single addiction. It's an addiction that seems to capture multiple vices at the same time. It concerns me that we may make it easier for people to become addicted to another vice. And when I look at our community and I look at families especially, I would hate to think that we would vote to support something that would facilitate the breakdown of even more families. I see kids that grow up without dads and moms, and my fear is that if we have another opportunity for them to engage in another vice, in this case it's going to be gambling, my fear is that maybe the rent money may be lost at the casino, or the money's gone and dad and mom get in an argument, and the next thing you know, you got a divorce on your hands and problems that go along with that. So, like I said before, I'm not opposed to the horse racing at all, but I am really concerned about the sociological costs that we may incur in our community if we support this endeavor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Tryon, you have the floor.
Thank you. I haven't heard from one person that was in favor of this, the people that I've been talking to. I did speak at length with a candidate for the Department of Ed, and she's very concerned because we have a high number of children that qualify for federal lunch programs, and she's just concerned that we just don't have the financing in this town to support a casino. Now, personally, a racetrack with horses is a family affair, and I think kids would enjoy, petting a horse or getting to know the horses. So I'm not really opposed to the race track and the horses, and I'd even go for a mile track. I mean, go big, go bold, or go home, basically. But the casino, no. If we could separate the two, fine, but we can't, I guess. And so therein lies the problem that I'm having economically. I just don't think we have the kind of income in this town to support that sort of endeavor. And so if people feel like they're not paying enough in taxes and they would rather spend it at the casino, then they can just send the Department of Revenue a check, I suppose. Save us all some grief, maybe. Thanks.
Mr. Lucas, you have the floor.
Yeah, just one final comment is, we keep running into these topics that have a socioeconomic aspect to them, and then we have free enterprise discussions, and we haven't had that discussion yet tonight. But I was proud of this council when we looked at local health directives, and I thought we made a good, wise decision on that. And I mean, I shouldn't go out and eat Little Debbie's every day, but I'm not asking the city to regulate, oatmeal cream pies here. There does take personal responsibility to handling entertainment options in a fair way and in a responsible way. And I do appreciate your concerns, Ed. I really do, that you've outlined, because there's nothing more than I want for the people in this community to be good. But we also have people begging for more to do and entertainment options in this community. We hear that over and over again. And I still fall back to that we've had a state law decision, and let's let business run its course a little bit and see what happens. And we've had a lot of people on this council over time that promote free enterprise. Well, I think this is a question on that, in my opinion. And so I think we also have to, I'd like to see us try to remain in the camp of not over-regulating things with local government.
One thing with the regulation, and Ed, you pointed to this, we do morally regulate a lot of things probably with the city. And one thing kind of just crossed my mind, speed limits is one of them. Now, I think everyone here would agree that 55 miles an hour on the interstate saves a lot of lives. But our speed limit isn't 55 miles an hour, it's 75 miles an hour. And it is set that way for, I believe, the greater good. And I truly believe that the greater good here, although I've heard the number of up to 10% of the people will become addicted to gambling. So 10% of the people versus, no, I'm sorry, 3% of the people will become addicted to gambling. So that's sub 1,000 people for the greater good of entertainment of the majority, vast majority of the population. So again, you have to do a fine line, and I always do a Ben Franklin close where I have a list of pros and a list of cons. And in this case, like in many cases when I cast my vote, my list of pros far outweighed my list of cons for this project. So thank you.
Other comments or questions? If not, I'll be calling for a vote. Okay, calling the question on number 4. A vote for will pass the motion. A vote against will not. A tie. Now let me pause and explain what can happen here.
About time.
Get it now. The reason I want to pause and explain what can happen here is, according to Robert's Rules of Orders, as the mayor, I can break this tie. One of two things will happen. be clear, I'm speaking figuratively here. I'm not voting. I can vote for, in which this measure would pass. I can choose not to vote, and according to Robert's Rules of Order, the motion would then fail. Making sure from the attorney here to make sure I don't say something wrong. I've thought a lot about this the last couple days, this question. Am I concerned about the morality of the community? I am proud to say that in the last 8 or so months, this council has sat and made several decisions that will affect the future of our town. Regardless of where you landed in those decisions, we have made several. This one is one of those decisions. I will get all of you for making me break this tie. I'm just kidding. I'm just joking. I'm just joking. Do not do that. I believe that we're all given free will for a reason. We may not contemplate exactly what that reason is. We may not understand it completely. But we have free will for a reason. I'm also a great believer in personal responsibility. My vice is chocolate cake, not Little Debbie's. But if I eat chocolate cake and fried chicken and things that aren't necessarily healthy with me, then I pay the price for that. I don't gamble, other than I occasionally donate a little money to the people in Las Vegas when I go there, but it's a very small amount. But I do believe in free will, so I'm going to vote in favor. This item passes. Moving on to number 5. Authorize the administration to enter into contract negotiations with the highest-ranking firm, Professional Financial Advisors, LLC, to provide retirement services to the city of North Platte. And Mr. Kibben is going to offer some insight to our process here before we begin. And let's just pause for about 30 seconds to let these folks exit the room safely.
It's important to me, Dan.
Mr. Kippen, please proceed.
All right, just want to give you kind of a background here in the process we went through for the selection of our proposed retirement advisor. When I arrived here, I learned that we had 5 different retirement plans. I think I've explained this once before, and our assets were divvied up amongst those 5 plans. And I felt like, without understanding the numbers, that it had to be costing somebody a significant amount of money, as it turns out, likely on the employees' backs. So we put out a request for proposals. We received 13 responses, and I provided each of you a supplementary piece of information. This is a scoring matrix that I used where I came from, and it takes into account a significant amount of data. We sent out a request for proposal, 13 responses. We had a committee made up of 9 members. 5 of which are sitting here tonight. We had 2 members from the police department, 2 members from the fire department, Dawn with finance, Lane with public service, and 2 members from municipal light and water, and myself. We shortlisted the firms to 5 and interviewed the top 5 firms, and their rank is on the far right-hand side of the sheet. And our request is that we enter into negotiations with PFA for our retirement advisory services. The second piece of information included in the packet is you'll see that essentially our fees, administrative fees, remain flat through this transition. The real impact is on the expense ratio fees. And Don, I can't remember, is that $612,000 annually or?
It's about $550,000 differently.
Difference. but it's annually, right? So annually, our employees are paying expense ratio fees under the current plan of $612,000, and in the proposed, it would be $54,700. PFA is here and happy to answer any questions you may have.
I do have a question on the process, Matt, and
You bet.
I believe I asked you this, but I don't recall. In this list of, in the invite to submit an RFP, approximately how many local firms were sent the notification and how many local firms responded?
We reached out to each one of the firms that had our plan prior to this change individually. And then we publicly advertised, obviously, in the North Platte Telegraph. But we did reach out to those that had our plan on an individual basis, letting them know that this was coming down the pipeline. And to keep their eyes out for it.
Okay, thank you.
Matt, I want to thank you for including the assignment of vendor rating matrix to the package, because that did answer a lot of questions for me. I did want to ascertain that police and fire will be a standalone fund, and then the other three will be combined under the entire city employee.
Before we get too far into the discussion, we probably should have a motion here. So,
Sorry.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Reeker,
Okay.
you might want to put your glasses on.
It was my ears that I was having trouble.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I move to allow administration to enter into a contract negotiation with the highest ranking firm, Professional Financial Advisors LLC, to provide retirement services to the city of North Platte.
Second.
Motion Reeker, second Nisley. Now we can have discussion. Mr. Vols, please continue your question.
Sure, thanks. Just to clarify on that, they would all be under PFA, but the police would be a separate fund, fire would be a separate fund, and the other three funds would be combined, correct?
If I misspeak, Don, help me out, but yes, the statutory requirements for fire and police require independent funds.
Looks weird when I sat in the back. So there's the city and the
Hold on. Tell us
municipality.
who you are.
Mark Workmeister, I'm with PFA.
Thank you.
This fire would be alone, the police would be alone. The city and municipality group would be combined into one plan. And then there's a 457 plan that all of the employees in those four branches would have access to. So we're going from 5 plans to 4 plan, but it would all be with under PFA advisement and then Voya as the record keeper and custodian.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Lucas, you have the floor.
I just asked to abstain from voting and being involved in the discussion. There's no common ownership between Nebraska Land National Bank and PFA, but they're a tenant on our 3rd floor. And I just feel that there could be a either perceived or potential conflict of interest. I just asked to abstain, please.
Thank you. You can sit quietly. Okay. Any other comments or questions?
I have a question, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Reeker, you have the floor.
In the past, I know I brought up the idea of some of our government funds being invested in Chinese securities. And as I recall, we've not been able to extricate ourselves from that. Will this allow us to have more control over how that money's invested?
I'll let Mark jump in as well. My interpretation is that we do have the opportunity to provide feedback in what funds are available to employees. As you and I have talked offline, it's likely difficult that we'll find many options that don't include Chinese investments, unfortunately.
Correct. Relative to what you have now, I don't know if that'll change too much. The opportunity is there, however, so as part of all 4 plans, we'll get feedback and we'll have a list of fund options like most retirement plans do. And if there's anything you don't want included or do want included, we can accommodate that. We're completely open architecture. But the standard model that we proposed would have options for international funds, which are going to include China, emerging market funds, which are going to include China, and plus all the the secondary exposure you get from companies that may be based domestically but do business in China. So I think it's going to be really hard to exclude that, but we are open, whatever each plan wants, we can accommodate.
Would that
And
be-
the key, if I could just expand for a moment, and the key to me is the return for the employees and their ability to make these choices. The city funds that go into this really are matching funds for the employees participating in the plans.
And that was going to be my exact question, that maybe the participants in these various funds should be given an opportunity whether they want to actually invest in specific instruments as opposed to not investing in those instruments.
And they will have those choices.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Every participant gets to choose what they want to invest in.
Oh, per individual?
Per individual, they all get to choose. I mean, part of our job is to advise them on what their best options are. But if they want to stay in a money market 100%, they can do that. If they want to
Okay.
invest in stocks, they can.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Ms. Brown, go ahead.
so how many funds are there that will be available for them to choose from? I mean, is there a limit?
So our proposal, I believe, included about 30 different options. However, Voya's platform offers over 15,000. So if we want to go get something that you currently don't have, we certainly can. But we narrowed it down to what we believe is a very good representation of all the different asset classes. So stocks, bonds, international, large cap, small cap, real estate, all the, what I would call the traditional asset classes.
So there'll be a limit.
Yeah, there's 30 different options approximately that
Okay.
in our proposal, and then we can tweak that if you guys want to.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I guess I'd like to make a comment and in gratitude that you've selected these folks. I've worked with them for a long time, and they're upstanding folks. So I think we've made a wise selection. I don't know if it'll impact your rent or not.
I did. Oh, yeah.
Other questions? Mr. Nisley, you appear to be going to say something.
I was just looking serious, Mayor, thank you.
Oh, okay. Thank you for your concerned disposition. Any other questions or comments on this issue? Seeing none, calling the question on number 5, please. Number 5 passes. Number 6, adopt a resolution consenting to the sale and consumption of alcoholic liquor on property owned by the City of North Platte during the Creative Unlimited Arts Council, Prairie Arts Center, Husker Game Tailgate, Fundraiser, and Community Event on September 18th, 2021.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt a resolution consenting to the sale and consumption of alcoholic liquor on property owned by the City of North Platte during the Creativity Unlimited Arts Council Prairie Arts Center Husker Game Tailgate on September 18, 2021.
Second.
Motion Reeker, second Garrick. Any discussion on item number 6? Calling the question on item number 6. Item number 6 is passed. Item number 7, approve application by the Creativity Unlimited Arts Council, DBA Prairie Arts Center, for a special designated license on September 18, 2021, from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. at Prairie Arts Center, 416 North Jeffers Street, for a Husker Game Tailgate, Fundraiser, and Community Event.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the application by Creativity Unlimited Arts Council, DBA Prairie Arts Center, for a special designated license on September 18, 2021, from 9 o'clock a.m. to 5 o'clock p.m. at Prairie Arts Center, 416 North Jeffers Street, for a Husker Game Tailgate.
Second.
Motion Reeker, second Lucas, I think. Any discussion on item number 7? Hearing none, calling the question on item number 7. Item number 7 passes. Item number 8, authorize the mayor to enter into an agreement with Olson Engineering for a landfill feasibility study and sign all necessary documents.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Ed.
I move to authorize the mayor to enter into the agreement with Olson Engineering and sign all necessary documents.
Second.
Motion Reeker, second Vols. I would like to have Lane approach and give us a little bit of background on what we're talking about here, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I want to start out by saying that we have a very good relationship with our current landfill and JBRJ and Ogallala, and we have very competitive rates when we've looked at landfills closest, which would be Lexington. They're very comparable. Where our costs associated with our hauling of our garbage come in, it's really, you could basically double our costs by the hauling, the transportation, the wages, the fuel, the equipment. And so the reason we're looking at the feasibility of a landfill possibly back to where our old landfill site was those very reasons, because of the transportation costs and being affordable for our consumers, because that impacts us as our residential, impacts our commercial because of the commercial haulers and the people that haul to our transfer station. And really, when you look at a landfill, the big costs associated with the landfill, its startup cost is the land. And we have the land there that was used at one time. This is basically a study to see with the EPA regulations, groundwater, the different things associated with it, if it makes sense to look further into opening our landfill back up or not. This is not saying we will or not. This is just a small study to see if it makes sense to go further with that. And I have Jess from Olson, if you have any questions for the engineering themselves as far as what this study would entail.
Thanks, Lane.
I do have a question about what the study would entail. So, thanks. And you and I spoke a little bit, Lane, and I appreciate all your, and I'll have some questions for you in a second. But I guess the one thing, looking at this proposal, would this be the end of the proposals? We do a lot of proposals here in North Platte, and then they sit on a shelf somewhere. So once you're done with this proposal, and I kind of highlighted some of the things that you were looking to do, will this be an affirmative whether it's cost advantageous? Will this be an affirmative on EPA regulations? Is this the only study that would need to be done on this proposed ground?
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Jess Holbert with Olson out of Holdridge office. To answer your question, mostly on regulations, municipal solid waste landfills are governed by was DEQ, now DEE. There's a set of regulations that you go through, and the first step of that would be the siting process. Lane kind of went into a lot of that we've been discussing already. But then you have different criteria that you must meet in the permitting process before they'll even site your ground. So we'll try to step through all those things to see if you meet those criteria in order to even move on to the next step. And within that, we are going to look at costs as well, comparing your costs for trucking and your current tipping fees in your other landfills versus what would you be paying now. Lane kind of alluded to, your big cost is going to be ground. You already have that. Moving forward from there, your only costs are going to be essentially construction and some equipment, operation maintenance type of things, and some set aside funds for your closure, post-closure type things, and that's required in your permit. So we would look at that. I would not say that this is going to be the end-all, be-all. It's a first step into moving into it. There would be more study to come, a hydrogeo study that would kind of study the ground and the what type of soils out there, et cetera, all of that, which is required part of the permit. So this is a good first step to see, first of all, if you can be sited, and then second of all, if it's even monetarily feasible to move forward to the next step. One thing I will add is part of the permit, there's different sections, and the first part of the first part of the permit is gonna be your location and design criteria. And all of what you're completing right now, if you do choose to continue moving on and permit a landfill, that can be used. That is the first part of your permit. So, I mean, it's not like you're wasting stuff. This would be building the first section of that permit as you move on into the next. So it's usable data, but I wouldn't say you're quite at the end all be all, but you're definitely checking off the initial boxes.
Could I just provide some level of expertise to the matter? The way I look at this is really no different than the way I've built buildings in the past. And in the process, we have what's called level 1, which is reconnaissance. Level 2 is schematic design. And level 3 is design development through construction documents. And at the end of construction documents, you're ready to go to bid and you construct. This is the level 1 phase of that process. Whether you're building a rec center or a police and fire station or a landfill, this process would occur regardless of project type. So when we talk about these other projects, this is my expectation for the flow of a project is to go through these steps.
Thank you. And the reason I asked, when I saw this on here, I don't know where I'm at on this whole thing, to be honest with you, but, so I was curious, why did we close the landfill back in 1994? So I actually reached out to a city councilman who still lives in town, and he was there in 1994, and I said, hey, can you tell me why we did this? And according to this councilman, he said, at the time, regulations were going to be a daunting task to make this area because of the clay fill or something, and I'm not an expert, but didn't have enough clay. So they were gonna have to move the landfill down to Maywood is what he told me. So that's when they chose this option. So where I'm going with this is, so we spend $9,000 now, and then we, this looks pretty good, and then we go spend another $25,000. It just seems very insidious to me. Not that I don't want to examine this and see the cost benefits, but I also want to examine it, see the cost benefits, and see the cost benefits of even putting it somewhere else. And Lane even said when we visited, it's not cost advantageous to put it somewhere else. But then looking at unintended consequences down the road, we have a transfer station there now, but then we have a lot of beautiful homes and more development going in out there, and then to have a landfill right kind of in the middle of it. That's just, and then I'm just talking to myself, to be honest with you, but that's where my thoughts are going with this whole thing, so I don't know, but thank you very much, I appreciate it.
I could maybe add just a little bit to that.
Thank you.
Your 3 minutes is up.
I'm looking for clarity.
In the mid-90s, there was a new set of regulations that did come along, so you remember, like me, if I went with my dad to the local dump, big difference from then, that's a mountain of trash. It's in essentially a hole or a blowout. They piled it in there and hopefully covered it up at some point when they were closing it, but until that point, they really never did. They come out with Title 132 Subtitle E landfills, which means you have to have a dual liner system underneath your landfill. So the one you had out there now, you wouldn't have had a liner under there, I'm pretty sure. There could have been some forward thinking to attempt some of that, but like you said, you're probably not in the clayey soils. You can have different kinds of liner underneath your landfill. If you are fortunate enough to have some of the clay type soils, it's an option to use that. To have a couple foot of an earthen liner, you must meet a certain permeability requirement of 1 × 10⁻⁷ centimeters per second. I'm sure you all like to go through those kinds of numbers, I'll quit nerding out on you now. The dual liner system, then you'd have to put like a plastic liner on top of that. So you essentially have 2 liners protecting the leachate that is coming down through the waste. You wouldn't have had that. Back in the day, they might have had an option to move that just because of that. There's been a lot of technologies now, a lot of the landfills that I'm permitting, they utilize what they call as a geosynthetic clay liner, which is essentially a blanket with bentonite. It's bentonite impregnated, and it gets wet, and it meets that permeability requirement. So you can essentially put these things in places where you do not have that clay material and still meet the dual liner system. It used to be more outrageous, and now it can almost be a wash. I mean, fuel costs and whatnot to actually mine the clay and then go back, and you're putting it in lifts, you're moisture conditioning it, you're compacting it, and you have to take permeability tests and everything else on this stuff. So that is your dual liner portion of that system. The other part, I guess, going forward with the Title 132 and comparing it back to our old dump days, things have changed a lot in there, and there's an operations manual in your permit that you're going to have to abide by. That's state governed. So essentially, you're operating in cells, and there's a daily cover requirement. So you don't have open waste at the end of the day. You can either use an alternate daily cover, you can use earthen cover. That helps with your vectors and your odors and things of that nature. Again, you're fortunate enough to have a large piece of property. Depending on what you want to do with the property in the future, I think there's definitely a place to hide that. You would utilize your topography for your excavation. You could get it out away from things in that nature. So those are some of the things we're looking at along with the other criteria. But ultimately, yeah, it's your decision.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
I have a question for Mr. Olson, for Representative Olson's. Are we talking about land that's out by the transfer station now, somewhere around in that neck of the woods? Okay. Is the Ogallala landfill, is that filling up? I mean, are we behind any?
The J-Bar J landfill south of Ogallala right now, they estimate has about a 70-year lifespan still with its current amount of garbage going there.
7.
70.
70. I'm going 7. Okay. Thank
So
you.
there's a lot of life there. We're just, looking at.
Just checking the cost. Okay.
I'll just add, what this really comes down to is the nearly $2 million we're putting on driving down the road every year. That's really why we're performing this study, is to say, does it make better sense to buy fuel and load trucks and drive trucks to Ogallala, or does it make sense to put the trash in North Platte and hopefully provide services to neighboring municipalities in North Platte?
Mr. Mayor, this has been on my radar ever since I was elected. The fact that we've been hauling our trash for 27 years down the road just blows my mind. And for us to not at least take a look at the feasibility and the cost analysis, that to me, it's a no-brainer. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit upfront cost, but it could in the long run save us a ton of money. So just my thoughts.
I was just going to add, and I know Lane was talking that you do have a great relationship with the landfill you're going to right now, but it's also some sense of put your mind at ease, I guess, if you will, controlling your own destiny on those kinds of things, having your own control over it, because at any time, they can shut that landfill down, and then you're looking at trucking it even further. You just have no control over that because it's their landfill. So those are some of the reasons that come up with municipalities or organizations.
Mr. Mayor, would this would be an addition laterally to the existing landfill? No?
As far as the land, we have about roughly 300 acres around the transfer station, so it'd be determining where the best site for the landfill on those acres the city now owns. As far as, not necessarily on top of what was already there, it'd be probably land more likely to the west, because that's where we have the most land, is to the west of the transfer station now.
So you wouldn't necessarily just be adding on to the existing landfill?
Because of EPA regulations and everything, I don't think we could actually add on to what was there, since it
Okay.
didn't meet those regulations. It would have to be basically a new cell or cells.
Well, I think this is probably a wise move, quite frankly, with the price of fuel. I don't know. I'm not very much of an optimist, I guess, that it's going to come down very much or very fast. And the way things are going, we may have to push it to Ogallala in a wheelbarrow, so this may make a lot of sense.
Mr. Mayor, I just have, just have two quick questions, thank you. First of all, is the entity that we're taking trash to today owned by a municipality, or is that a private entity?
It's a private entity. I think they're part of Waste Connections, if I'm not wrong on that.
And then maybe that ties into my second question is in this scope of work, is it possible to get a little analysis on the cost pros and cons of staying on at this site versus an alternative site? In other words, how much would we save outside of land costs, because we could figure that out, but how much would we save by any infrastructure that's there versus would have to be replicated? And second, any insight on what reaching out to private entities would look like versus doing it as a municipality? I mean, I guess I'm wondering, because those are questions we might have when we get that study. I'm wondering if in this scope of work, we could even just get a little bit of that, even at a high level.
Sure, and I guess, from my understanding, why we probably haven't had someone say they want to open up a landfill in our area is mainly the cost of land. And that's, that's your first big hurdle, and with what we all know land prices are, that makes your startup cost pretty extensive, where we already have the land existing, makes it maybe a little more feasible for us just because of that ownership. But that's some things I'm not sure as far as the scope of this study, how much of that would be involved or not, but maybe look into that.
I'll add in again, here's what I'll do is I'll share the expectations of a level 1 with the council, because understanding the land and could we purchase land somewhere else, that absolutely should be part of a level 1.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, in theory, you could sell off some land and buy some replacement land if that location wasn't ideal. So what I was just getting at is how much other infrastructure is there that you gain value from. Yeah, okay, thank you.
More questions or discussion on item number 8? Thank you, gentlemen. Seeing none, calling the question. Mr. Woods, you need to vote, please. That item passes. Moving on to item number 9, second reading and action on ordinance number 4071, conveying real estate property at 921 West First Street to Demetrios, I was going to practice this, Trifonopoulos, I believe. Okay, Mr. Kibben, please read the ordinance.
An ordinance of the City of North Platte, Lincoln County, Nebraska, authorizing the sale of Lot 7, Block 1, Breeze Hinman Edition, North Platte, Lincoln County, Nebraska, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinance in conflict herewith, providing for the effective date and publication thereof. Waiver of the third reading would be handy.
A waiver would be handy.
Thank you, Mr. Kibben.
Mr. Mayor, I move to waive the 3 required readings on ordinance number 4071 and to adopt it, conveying the real estate to Demetrios Trifonopoulos.
I'll second.
Motion Reeker, second Lucas. Any discussion on item number 9?
Is there any particular reason why we wanted to speed it up?
I'm not sure, excuse me, of the amount of earnest money that they've provided us already for the property, and Tony Miller isn't here.
It was my suggestion we get the money paid in full.
Okay.
Given the locale of the purchaser. So he's done that. I talked to Don today. We're still holding the check. I said, I think we can go ahead and cash it. We have an offer and acceptance, therefore a contract. The statute does provide for 3 weeks of publication.
Yeah, a remonstrance.
Unless, under subsection 4 of that statute I sent you over the weekend, it qualifies as being used for the operation of utility. This probably does. So therefore, we don't need to advertise in an abundance of caution. We thought about advertising to make sure there's no title defects for the purchaser. It goes by Jim, by the way.
So
I hope that's the same.
He didn't put that in this law.
No.
Mr. Mayor, a question maybe for you guys, or anybody, have we had anybody contact the city with concerns about this conveyance or to provide any alternative offers?
There was
if I can jump in real quick, this was another process where we publicly advertised and publicly bid the sale of this property. For those that may not be familiar with, it's a well house across the street from the high school. This project was something we were going to have to demolish. There was some interest in the community to purchase it, which is why we publicly advertised it through public surplus. And this gentleman was the high bidder for the project. And in my estimation, nice price for what we would have gotten had we not publicly advertised it, about double.
Have you had any contacts of concern about the conveyance of the property after that bid process was conducted?
I think that's the due diligence process that Terry's referencing with reaching out and getting paid in full.
But there's been no adverse communications that I'm aware of, Don and Lane have not heard any.
I have heard it from no one following the finalization of the bid period.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, regarding this property, whose responsibility is it to close the well?
Been closed.
It's been closed. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, they grouted it some time ago.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Several of you are poised to vote, so calling the question on item number 9. Item number 9 passes. Item number 10, approve the resolution providing for the designation of Western Nebraska Bank as a warrant lender, authorizing the execution and delivery of a warrant purchase agreement with such designated warrant lender and referring to and incorporating the terms and conditions of ordinance number 3874 relating to warrant financing.
I move to approve the resolution providing for the designation of Western Nebraska Bank as a warrant lender, authorizing the execution and delivery of a warrant purchase agreement with such designated warrant lender and referring to and incorporating the terms and conditions of ordinance number 3874 relating to warrant financing.
Second.
Motion Nistley, second Volds, I believe. Is that correct? Okay. Any discussion on item number 10? Calling the question on item number 10. Item number 10 is passed. Item number 11, adopt a resolution approving claims and authorizing the issuance of a warrant to Beverage Inc. in the amount of $56,886.20 and a warrant to Shellco Construction in the amount of $244,014.92 to pay approved claims and referring to and incorporating the terms and conditions of ordinance number 3874 relating to warrant financing passed and approved on May 21, 2013.
I move to approve the resolution authorizing the issuance of 2 warrants as presented in the materials.
Second.
Motion Volz, second Garrick. Any discussion on item number 11? Seeing none, calling the question on item number 11, please. Item number 11 has passed. Item number 12, approve claims.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the claims.
Second.
Motion Reeker, second Nistley. Discussion? Seeing none, calling the question on item number 12. Item number 12 passes. The claims are paid. Public agenda request. We respect our city employees and request that any complaints or criticisms of employees not be aired in a public meeting. Concerns about employees should be brought to the attention of the city administrator or mayor. Individuals in violation will be declared out of order. This is the time that if anyone seated here with us would like to recommend something to be put on the city agenda, please approach the podium and so specify. As no one has approached the podium, Mr. Reeker.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Okay. Somebody has to say it. Calling the question.
Oh, sorry.
We can't leave till you vote, Dean. Okay.
That's
Meeting
right.
is adjourned. Thank you,
Been here a long
everyone.
time. I checked out a little while ago.
I think it's pretty remarkable, just being old. And how many seconds? Need to go.
I'm teasing. Oh, does it really?